Welcome to Saturday versus Sunday. I'm Jeff Dover. With me is John Barban. Let's talk football.
Right. So we're going to cover some of the other bowl games that aren't in the playoffs. This is more just a commentary on how messed up it is trying to even pick these games, given we don't know who's playing. People are opting out, but some people are playing, but in the transfer portal. So motivation is a thing. Are these guys auditioning for the next team? Are they for coaching that's changing? Are they auditioning for their current team? I've heard a take saying North Carolina players are going to want to play because they're essentially auditioning to stay on the team with Belichick because he has no allegiance to any of these guys. He might do what Dion did and clean house. So we're all over the map with how these games are working. And so we're going to do our best we're going to talk about the games we're interested in, try to pick a couple. We've got the opt-out tracker here, and we'll see where we end up with. Some of these games will be interesting to watch. No, or are you completely checked out on these?
Yeah, I mean, I was hesitant to even talk about it because I don't know. I'm not that interested in most of these games. Like, if you were a good example is the Colorado BYU game, like because
that's the one I'm most interested in.
If that was in the regular season, I'd be all about it.
Yeah.
Like, I'd be very excited to see that because I think it's a really important Big 12 game. But now, I don't know what to expect. I guess that's one of my biggest hesitations about it. The whole thing about previewing football or a gambling is this is how I think it's going to go, and then reveling in when we're right. Because
Yes.
it's how it went. So there's so many variables in there that I have no idea how it's going to go, including if the team cares, right? And so I automatically don't care if they don't care, kind of a thing. You know what I mean? So and it'll be super disappointing to watch the Colorado BYU game and immediately tell if one team doesn't care or both teams don't care or something like that. I think it's really cool that Dion, he talked about having Travis Hunter and Shadur are going to have huge insurance policies to make sure in case they get injured or something, which is great. But I mean, I don't know.
Well, I mean, the last press conference I saw with him, they are playing. Those insurance policies are already in place, and if you take him at his word, they're not messing around. This is their last data point before going to pro. They're both going to be highly drafted picks anyways, but it sounds as though they're taking this game seriously. And on that note, I'm looking at the opt-out tracker right now. They're one of the least. There's only 8 or 9 players between both teams opting out, where other games there's 20 or 30 players opting out.
Yeah.
So this may be, first of all, these have been 2 wagons this year. I've found them both pure entertainment to watch all year long. How can you not watch Colorado? Love them or hate them, they're entertaining. BYU's played some of the craziest games all year. We've both been enjoying watching them. Yeah. And they both just have a handful. I mean, literally 3 or 4 opt-outs. So if anything, that might be one game where they're both taking it seriously. This is, this is for what would you call it? 3rd place in the Big 12. One way of looking at it, because they were right there at the very end, right?
Yeah.
So I actually think this might be one of the competitive games. I mean, we're not going in chronological order. Let's just start there.
Yeah, no, I mean, let's start with the games we're interested in, I guess.
All right, well, let's just start right here. We sort of landed on this one.
So we've got Colorado -4 and the over-under 54.5. Do you have any initial thoughts on that?
BYU's overs have been working for us, but that's kind of a lot.
Yeah.
But Colorado gets themselves.
It's not the biggest one on that day either, which is interesting.
Which is crazy
by a lot. Yeah.
But Colorado gets itself into high-scoring games.
Yes.
And I don't know if BYU can hold them back into a lower scoring game. It might turn into a Colorado scores a bunch, gives up a bunch. So, God, it's a big number, but I would tend to want to go over that.
Yeah, I was leaning toward Colorado -4 if I had to pick something, just because for all the points you just mentioned, the fact that, if the culture with that team and with Dion is the game's important, and we're going to take out the massive insurance policy because there's no chance you're not playing in this, for the last data point, like you said. So at least if I had to guess that their motivation is high for this one. So I'd probably lean the Colorado -4. So,
yeah, I mean, It to I'm tending to want to do that as well.
Hmm.
BYU does manage to stick around in a lot of these
Yeah,
games and
no, you're
turn
right
them
about
into
that.
something interesting at the very end.
Hmm.
I, my guess, I don't know, but my guess is this has a chance to be one of the most entertaining non-playoff bowl games.
I agree.
Partly because there seems to be motivation.
Yep.
There's insurance policies there for the big time players on
Yep.
Colorado. If
Low
Sanders,
number
you
of
take
opt-outs.
very few opt-outs on both teams.
Yeah,
BYU's
which is a
been,
good sign.
if you haven't watched BYU, they've been pure entertainment all year. Their games
Yeah.
have just been so much fun to watch. I just can't see how everything lines up for this being a fun game. So,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm on the over. Dover's on Colorado.
Perfect. What's the next one you're interested in?
Yukon, North Carolina.
Gosh, really? Okay.
But for no other reason, well, I touched on it just now. For
Yeah.
no other reason than I'm assuming, I don't know this, but I'm assuming the players at North Carolina are viewing this as an audition, or I don't know, an audition to be on the team, to show Belichick like we're worth keeping on this team. It's, I don't know how much earlier in the season he knew about this opportunity, and if he would have been directly paying attention to the players on this team earlier. Obviously, now that he's got the job, he could have easily watched film. And I'm assuming the way Belichick operates, he has to watch film on these players and decide, are any of these guys worth keeping? There's nothing stopping him from doing what Dion did and just cleaning house and starting all over again. I'm assuming players, it sounds as though some reports say agents and players are actually approaching them, not the other way around, and saying, we've got guys that like want to come play here. So my guess, I could be wrong, but my guess is it probably is an accurate take that a lot of these players, this is their only chance to show him live. Like, I want to stay on this team.
Yeah.
So
here's
I'm assuming there's motivation for North Carolina. This isn't anything to do with UConn. So I would take UNC, or I would take UNC minus lay the points with UNC.
Gotcha. Yeah. So this is so it's UNC minus 2.5, which is a pretty short line.
Pick 'em.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is so that the number of opt-outs UConn has?
I don't know.
0.
There you go.
That's
full strength
impressive.
UConn.
Right. Yeah. That's the pretty sure it's the first time we've talked about UConn on this quality program.
Yeah,
so
yeah, exactly.
It's but like, hey, no opt-outs, that's significant. Like, I find that's one of the only teams in the bowl season that has that. Like, I don't need some of the teams in the other ranked matchups have at least an opt-out. So anyway, so no opt-outs for UConn. There's only 4 for North Carolina. And like you said, it's going to be on audition for the new staff.
Yeah.
And also, at least especially if you're like one of the backup at some of the positions at North Carolina, or you feel like you should have been starting and you weren't, and because this is a clean slate now, right?
Yeah.
This is a new person coming in, evaluating everyone the same. There's no guarantees, at least regardless if he's going to clean house, there's no guarantees for starting for next season, So it would be a tryout for that. And so, in the fact that they only have 4 opt-outs, and I don't think any of them were starters, or at least to the quarterback wasn't.
Was it the QB? Was that's not the starter?
I didn't think so, but it was the
whatever. The point is that's one of the lowest opt-out numbers.
Yeah.
4.
So that one might actually be worthwhile watching. And I didn't think UConn was that good this year, so I'm a little surprised North Carolina's just got the short lead with it. But then again, it's
again they're
8-4. They had a better season than when we thought. They lost to Syracuse and Duke, but they beat a bunch of teams that weren't that good either. But anyway, so that's I mean, it's something.
It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting.
Yeah.
The again, I don't know how Vegas is setting these lines. My guess is at some point in the future they have to have a formalized, kind of like NFL formalizes the injury report. Like Wednesday, you have to know.
Yeah.
They're going to have to do something about that here with who's really staying and who's really.
Yeah.
First of all, who's in the portal and not playing, who's in the portal but also playing, right? That's
a really
2 different things,
yeah,
right?
That's a good point.
And then who else is, I guess those are the 2 major things you need to know.
The quarterback for North Carolina, just to clarify, is Criswell. Jacoby Criswell. He's at and so it's not Harrell's the backup who's in the transfer portal.
Okay, so then so that's good then.
Yes.
At least that's good for what the sample of players we're going to get out of North Carolina.
Yeah.
But this all has to get formalized next year or sometime soon. I just don't. And then the motivation thing, I don't know how you even factor that in. The other thing is like coaching staffs, like entire staffs. For instance, I'm interested in the Syracuse Washington State game. That game's around the corner here. I could go watch it if I wanted to,
Right.
but nobody on Washington State's showing up.
No.
And the entire coaching staff's not there either.
Yeah.
And the last I heard, no one really even knows, or it hasn't been publicly announced who's even calling plays.
Yeah. And
Like,
there's a lot of Syracuse transfers too. So that's one of my games. Like I'm not going to watch mostly for the Washington State part, but Syracuse has a lot of opt outs too. So
yeah, it's
what the
just,
hell's going on? No. So to get back to your first
yeah.
point there about they've got to shore up the transfer thing, because
Mhm.
the idea about being in the portal, and that means you could be playing or you could not be, right?
Right.
So like that's really messed up. So having a
Yeah.
list of eligible players, at least who's like playing on the day, has to be
Yeah.
available, and they'll have to work that out with the opt-out thing. The opt-out thing's really tough because of the transfer portal. It doesn't align with the academic year and with the bowl
Yeah.
schedule, right? So like
I maintain
that's
the
going to be
academic year is irrelevant here. Clearly, these kids don't give a
it's
shit
going to
about
become
academics.
more of it, right? Like
Yeah.
it's so that's it's going to be really hard to change. Well, it's just like you said, it needs to be addressed because they can't
I wonder.
transferring before the bowl game is
Yeah.
not a good option.
I wonder if a trend will reveal itself over time that someone who's in the portal but playing is wants to show up big for themselves because they're obviously auditioning for some other
Mm,
team. Like I wonder if that becomes a thing Vegas over time learns to factor in. It's like, oh, that's a
mm,
quarterback a 4-star quarterback in the portal, but his coach has him playing in this game,
yeah,
as if that's not an audition for all the places and there's money on the other end of that too.
yeah, oh yeah,
Like if he shows
for
up
sure.
and shows out in a bowl
Mhm.
game, maybe he bumps up the amount he'll be offered. Maybe a new team is joining the mix after seeing him. I don't know.
Yeah.
This is so new. Well, this is
Mhm.
the first time with the 12 team playoff messing all this up. Another note on this. We're just going to opine a little bit about what's going on here. Obviously, this is the first year of the 12 team playoff. I think it's just destroying the interest level in all of these other games. And because of the portal, the combination of the 12 team playoff and the
Yeah.
portal,
Mhm.
we arrive at this situation where, for instance, this Oklahoma Navy game I'm looking at, I
Mhm.
would have been super interested in that. Now,
Not now.
basically, nobody on Oklahoma's playing. I
Nope.
think more Navy players are going to be there. What I don't know what the opt out is there.
I'll check
Um,
it for you. Keep
the
going.
motivation, I think Navy. I think traditionally the service academies show up motivated for these things, but I
One
don't know.
Navy opt-out as of right now,
There you go.
a
So you're going to get
cornerback.
assuming you're going to get the full
But it
a
seems like
corner.
most of the Oklahoma team and some of their equipment staff are opting out. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Right, exactly. I don't even think they have a bus to get to the stadium, so the driver's not even going to be there. So, what do you expect from Oklahoma here? I don't know. Now, obviously, Oklahoma generally will recruit higher ranked players than Navy, but I don't. What do you
No,
expect to happen
th-
here? The
this
only
is a
take,
this
yeah,
is a
go
great
ahead.
example of a game I couldn't care less about for that reason, right? Because it maybe Navy's going to be into it. I don't know,
Mhm.
probably just because it's the service academy type thing.
Yeah,
But it seems like Oklahoma's not into it at all, right? So
like I would
it's
lean Navy because I'm assuming the service academies instill into these guys you finish what you started.
yeah, totally. And I've never seen a service academy team not play hard ever.
Yeah, right.
So that's
Yeah.
just going to happen. So, and it's yeah. So let's say regular season, full strength, important game. What would you think the line would be between Oklahoma and Navy this season?
Well, are we at the end of the season when Navy started falling off, or at the beginning where they were putting up 50 points a game?
Let's say near the end of the season.
Like Oklahoma by 14 and a half?
Right, exactly. So now it's
Yeah.
Oklahoma by 3 is the
Yeah.
line right now
Yeah.
because of how to factor that in. But and it's not because it's a well matched game. It's because you don't know what you're going to get out of Oklahoma. So
Right.
let's
Exactly.
stick with the games that you're interested in. So
Okay. So that
what's another one? So we've got 2 so far, right? We've got the
we got two.
BYU Colorado and we got the Yukon North Carolina.
Right.
Okay, what else we got?
Big time interest. Georgia Tech, Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was a big time wagon for us that we landed a couple big bets on them. They've been fun to watch. They took Texas to the wire. They took down Alabama, right? Like
Yeah.
this team's has something in it that it can take down a big team. They did it a couple times this year. They totally handled Auburn. Georgia Tech, they started the season off with one of the best games of the year. Little did we know FSU was going to be that bad. that win aged a little differently. It looked like they took down a top 10 team. Then it realized FSU was not a top 10
Mhm.
team. But then they put in, they took down Miami, and they could have easily taken out Georgia. So
Yeah.
these turned out to be two really interesting teams this year. It's a little disappointing they're against each other, because I would have been on both of them,
Mhm.
no matter who they were playing against.
Mhm.
But in this one, I mean, I'm tempted to take the over in this one, but at
Mhm.
the same time, there has been a fair number of opt-outs. The most important thing is it looks like the quarterbacks on both teams are playing.
Yeah.
Pavia's in for sure. And I think Pavia just got some kind of ruling where he can play again next year.
Yes.
So this is a serious game for Pavia,
Yeah.
and he's the best thing on Vanderbilt.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I want the over in this game, but
Yeah,
I
this
don't
is a
know which
great
side.
example of a game that, again, in the regular season, I'd be super interested in. I'm not now.
Right.
I'm way less interested in than you are because of the opt outs. Both teams have a lot.
Mm-hmm.
You're right about the starting QB stuff, but it really, I have no idea about the motivation. Like, I could
Yeah.
easily see one team being into it as soon as the game starts and one team not. I could see both teams not being into it. And you wouldn't know that till going in. So I can't make a prediction on it because
Mm-hmm.
the I don't know. I've we don't know what it's going to be like, and it's something wrong. Like, it's one thing betting on. We've made some wrong bets this year.
Oh
What was
yeah.
the one where I took the under and it was just stupid? It was what was that one?
I don't know, but
That might have been an
I
NFL one.
know we missed a couple unders by 40 points.
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
it's pretty bad.
so like it's one thing when we miss an under by 40 points and it's like we just got it wrong like that.
Yeah,
But if I bet on Vanderbilt and they don't show up and it's obvious when you're watching it and Georgia
that they're
Tech
just
wins.
uninterested. Yeah.
Yes, like that is I won't do that. I won't do that. Last
Okay,
thing,
so
just to come back
yep.
to your other point, we skipped over it, but there's when you said that okay, so that what's ruining it now? Okay, the 12 team. So this game's ruined for me for
Mhm.
my interest in watching it.
Yep.
The what's ruined it, like you said. So we've got a 12 team playoff, and so then that makes the other bowl games less interesting. We got the transfer portal, and that's negatively affecting it, and the opt outs and that stuff. I was going to push back just a little bit that I felt like this before, like when it was just the four teams in the playoff and things like that, because the same thing was happening. Now it wasn't as it wasn't as far reaching, but
Yes.
there was still people opting out and there was still teams like not showing up for the
Right.
bowl game, right?
Yeah.
So that was it for sure was happening before. So I don't think I wouldn't say that it's been caused by the 12 team playoff and the transfer portal, but it's for sure facilitating it.
It's
So
exacerbated it even worse.
it is exacerbated. I'll give you
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah.
it was absolutely was there before.
Oh,
So
I
and that
agree.
yeah, but
Let's finish off the Georgia Tech Vanderbilt
yeah,
game.
sorry, we're all over the place
Do
today.
we? Yeah. Well, this is a bit of there's not a lot to pick here. So this is more of an open discussion about
Yeah,
what has this done to the other bowl games? And anyone listening or watching, please comment, like, what has it done for your interest in these games? So
yeah, we're a little
Georgia,
all over today just because just like the bowl season, it's a little all over the place too with opt
yeah,
outs and motivation.
yeah.
Like who knows what you're
We're
going to
trying
get?
to encapsulate the chaos
Yeah,
of these games in the chaos of today's
yeah.
episode.
In the middle of
So
this podcast, I'm just going to go in the transfer portal for a few minutes and
yeah,
it's
yeah,
just going to be
Dover's,
Marvin
he
for a
won't be
bit.
back. He won't be
Yeah.
back. Yeah, he's not motivated anymore. So the other thing is the motivation piece.
Hmm.
If regardless who's there, are the teams motivated? My it's just a guess, but my guess is the arrows are pointing up for both programs. This was a surprisingly good year for Vanderbilt,
Yeah.
especially beating a team like Alabama
Yep.
and hanging in there with Texas, who's in the playoff right now, and Vanderbilt can look at themselves in the mirror saying we could have beat Texas,
Yep.
right? Not that they could have made the playoffs. They obviously dropped some bad games, but they had a good season. So my guess is they're motivated regardless who's opted in and out. Same with Georgia Tech. They could have easily beat a team that's in the playoffs.
Yep.
They probably are responsible for taking Miami out of the playoffs. And they started the avalanche of Florida State falling apart. Not saying that game caused Florida State to be that bad, but they were the first to take them out. So both of these teams have arrows pointing up. I could see them being motivated. I could see the coaching staff, I mean, not I think they're both sticking around. I don't think there's any major coaching changes here. So
Mhm.
again, no idea what's going to happen with who's playing and not playing, but just the motivation piece, I'm guessing will be there for both of these teams.
Yeah. Here's another thing to the motivation piece. So
Mhm.
from it, and this is one, a couple of these things are estimating. So one of them are speculating. So one of them is that if, especially for a team that was predicted not to go to a bowl at the beginning of the year,
Yeah.
right? So immediate days like in June and July, when all the team sees where they're ranked and where they're going to be predicted to finish in the conference, and both Vanderbilt and Georgia Tech were predicted to not go to bowl games.
Mhm.
Okay. So now when you qualify for it and you go to the bowl game, I feel like that does help the motivation because it's like we weren't supposed to be here. We want to win this game and, that kind of a thing.
Right.
So I think that's part of it too. The other thing I noticed, that this is just from some of the coaching staff said this at Florida, is that one of the big advantages for teams like this, like up and coming, weren't supposed to be good, are good, change in personnel, which it was just every team now,
Yeah.
they really take advantage of the extra practices. That's actually the benefit of the bowl game. So, well, for half the teams in college football, when they're done in December, they're done. Like they can't practice again until spring football. So, one
Oh,
of the
right.
major advantages of bowl game is that you get like 14 more practices because you're allowed to, which you
Right.
wouldn't be otherwise, right? So,
That
just being able
actually
to,
seems wrong.
I
They all
know,
should have 14 more practices
right, but
regardless.
it's not. It's additional practices, and then and so that's if you're, and then that way, that's one of the advantages of that is if you have like your starters already said, like I'm in the transfer portal, but then guess what? The backup is going to be starting that game, and then that might be your
Yeah.
person for the next season, right? So,
It's unique that they
so
get that much practice time.
I might be wrong on the number. It's I don't
Whatever it
quote me
is,
on the 14,
they
but
obviously
it's
get
like
some
two
time.
weeks of
Yes.
practices. I think it's
Right.
like 10
Right.
contact practices or something. I don't know,
Whatever it is,
but
they get 2 weeks of whatever
yeah.
they'll be allotted. Yeah.
So like that. So for that, and the coaching staff looks at that as very valuable, right? Because there could be a guy that didn't start all season, but now and he's a sophomore and he's going to be a junior next year, and you think he's going to be the starting person. So now he gets 10 practices starting with the ones, and
Yeah.
then starts a game, and then gets you a little momentum going into spring football in April, right? So I think to finish off the thought about the Vandy Georgia Tech, like that's the both those teams are in that area where they've had a few opt-outs, but like they're an up and coming team. Arrows are
Yeah.
pointing up, like you said, and they want those extra practices.
Yep. The next game that should be interesting but isn't is USC Texas A&M.
That couldn't be less interesting if it tried. The
There's
number of opt-outs
it's
is
and important ones.
yes,
The branch, both branch play. I
yes.
mean, Jesus, USC, my God.
God, that is really crazy, right? So that for me was the first notable transfer, was that guy Addison who went,
Yeah.
was the Bolitnikov in Pitt
At Pitt
and
and then
went
went
to
to USC.
USC,
Yeah, yeah.
right? And so now to have Branch leaving USC is
And his
crazy.
brother, they're going together,
Yeah.
which is
So
you're right. Addison, when I think about it, you're right. That's the first one. I was like, wow, a player
this
that good's leaving.
yeah, the
And
first
then
notable, that's
yeah,
for me at least as the
yeah,
average football fan, that was
yeah,
the first notable transfer. Like Pitt, that's the thing where Pitt wasn't that good, but like, you knew you have that guy coming back, right? Like that
yeah.
people would never leave teams that,
Right, right.
so that was nuts. But
And I
anyway, so yeah,
remember
it's
that
crazy
when
that he's leaving.
yeah, and he was the what's the best receiver, Bolitnikov, whatever it is.
Litnikov, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like that guy, that guy.
Yeah.
Then I was naive enough to not realize, oh, he's getting paid. Of course he's leaving. Like, what, of course he's not going to stay at Pitt. USC
Yeah.
has all the money in the world. All right, so moving on, Boston College and Nebraska. I want to be interested in this game, but I mean, Boston College has been one of our wagons. Put it this way, I'll probably turn it on, and as Dover stated in a previous podcast, we'll see in the first 5 minutes if anyone wants to be at this game. On paper, it looks like it should be fun. Again, for me, I'm totally biased. I have a nostalgia with Nebraska. When I first started watching college football, they were a powerhouse, and
Mhm.
this year Boston College has just been fun to watch for both of us. So I have a affinity for both of these teams for no other reason than just nostalgia and interest. But I don't know if there's going to be anything worth watching here, and who's there, and what the motivations are. So
Yeah, and Castellanos isn't there,
no, he's
right?
not. So
And there's a lot of opt-outs for Nebraska.
right.
So that
So it's
yeah.
kind of like I want to watch that one. I don't know. I'll give it 5 minutes and see what happens.
Mhm.
Next one that I really hope has some juice to it is Iowa State versus Miami.
Yep.
Now, this is in Orlando. It's going to be a home game for Miami. I'm assuming Ward is actually playing in this game.
Yeah, he's not, as of time of recording, not listed as the opt-outs.
And both of their starting receivers at Iowa State, I think, are both actually going to play in this game.
Well, and it seems, again, at time of recording, there's only one opt-out listed for this whole bowl game, which is the backup, I think, for Miami.
Right.
So,
So if that's true,
yeah,
okay, so let's say that, and this is ridiculous. We have to go through this. If that's true, if all of these players are actually going to be there,
yeah,
if the coaching staffs, there's an important coach we're not quite aware of that might not be there. I think
yeah,
they're all intact.
yes,
The arrow's pointing up for sure on Iowa State. That was a great season.
yep,
Yes, Arizona kicked their ass. Arizona State kicked their ass at the end. But either way, this has been a great season. Iowa State, if you've watched any of our other shows, has been one of my most fun teams to watch all year. I
yep,
found them totally entertaining. They have two stud receivers that people don't really know about. I think they're 1,000 yards each.
yes,
And Miami's Miami. Everyone knows about them. They've dropped a couple inexplicable games, but all year long they were expected to be in the playoffs. So the one argument could be, okay, so the charitable argument for Iowa State is arrows are pointing up. I think he's a legitimate coach. And I'm assuming he'll have them motivated to finish the season strong here. And this is another big time team for them to take down. Miami, you could argue, is showing up. Yeah, we don't want to be here. We were supposed to be in the playoffs. I'm just saying, if for the Iowa State charitable side,
yeah,
but then again, Cristobal can't really afford to drop a game. It's going to look really bad on him if he can't get these guys, because that's the knock on him. Like he can recruit and everything, but when it comes to game time, that's where his critics will say he falls off a bit. So it wouldn't look good on him if this team just sort of no-shows this game. So I don't know at all what to expect here. I just really hope this turns into a real game. I'm gonna tune in, and this is purely just based on hope that these two teams show up.
Well, the fact that there's a low opt-outs both teams gives me hope, because I'd be surprised if no one opted out, and then chose to not show up, like, for the game. So, like, that to me, they sort of go hand in hand, but I might be wrong on that. But so the fact that there's low number
it's
of
a
opt-outs,
reasonable assumption.
It's in Orlando, so at least for Miami, there'll be, family or friends potentially, for some of the Miami players. I don't like that.
God, it sucks when the stadium's just empty for these games.
I know.
It just sucks.
But Iowa State would like a chance to go to Florida, I'm sure, over the, in December. So, but yes, I'm cautiously optimistic that on paper, I was like, oh, this will be good. This is the opposite reaction I had for the USC Texas A&M, because when I saw that, I'm like, this is going to be good. And then so the opt-outs, I'm like, nope. Couldn't care less. This one, I was like, I hope this one's good. And only one person's opted out, so it looks like it'll be good. And and that'll, that's a good, in Orlando bowl game. With two ranked teams. Cam Ward is great. He's super entertaining to watch, a real gunslinger, and throws it around. And so, it'll be good to see that. So I'm cautiously optimistic on that one too.
Yeah. But you don't have a play on it at all.
Again, I
want to go over this number too.
It's a high number.
It's a big number.
If I had to, on paper, I think Miami's the better team. So I was going to take them because it's a -3.5. It's all the lines are short, if you notice that, for the most part.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I
think they don't know.
That's Vegas saying, like, it could go either way.
We don't know. Yeah.
So
as these things approach a pick'em, that's just Vegas saying, go ahead. We don't know.
Yeah, totally. Right. Yeah. So I would lean Miami on this one, but I heard for the semi home field advantage.
Right. So if we were going to do this, it would be Dover on Miami and me on the over.
Sure.
Interesting note I heard is that Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders are buddies, and very recently they've been, I don't know, practicing together, not even practicing, just throwing the ball around together.
Sure.
And one take was, this is still another data point for Shedeur, and these are the two probably likely two quarterbacks that are going to go.
Good point.
For one before the other, whatever. One. So maybe there's a bit of, I want to stop short of saying ego, but a pride thing. And well, if he shows up, I better show up. Like, I don't want to be the one of the two of us. If we're the two top quarterbacks coming out, which all indications say that they are, it'll kind of look a little underwhelming if one of them shows out throws for 4 TDs and 300 yards, and the other one's just doesn't show or doesn't show out.
Yeah.
So
Oh
it
yeah.
almost like both of them, I'm assuming the story that we're hearing about Sanders is going to show up and play will lead Ward to be like, well, me too. Like
Yeah.
I can't have him showing up and me not.
Yep.
So
No, I think that's a great point. I think
yeah,
that elite athletes are competitive, like ultra competitive, like with
yeah,
anything they do, like workouts,
yeah,
on the field stuff, like cards on the plane, like
everything.
they're very competitive. So I think that's a great point. I think that if the Shadur Sanders and had the insurance policy and is going to be playing, and this is the last data point before the draft, and I absolutely think Cam Ward like he wants to throw for more yards and
Sure.
touchdowns than Shadur in the last
Yeah.
game.
Yeah.
So especially for a team that it could have gone to the playoffs and they're not. So this is like, see what you missed,
It's almost
hopefully.
like both of them are going to show up saying, look, we could have been two of the better quarterbacks in this playoff.
Yeah, or I look at it as like one guy wants to throw for 500 yards and be like, there it is, take me first before that
Or
guy.
that too.
Yeah.
Or depending who's picking first, it's like, I'd rather go second. Depending who's, oh my God, wait till we get to the draft. Anyways,
Hey,
so,
so
and
who switched in the NFL draft? It was the
the
Raiders,
Raiders
right?
won
Because
and bumped themselves down to the 6th pick, and now
yeah,
the Giants are first.
right. Okay.
I saw an interview. Rich Eisen was interviewing Dion, asking, where would you want your son to go? He's like, I don't care. If New York's first, sure. If the Raiders are first, sure. Who cares? Like he's
Good
gonna.
for him.
I mean, like it would be really tacky if he actually picked one. Like that wouldn't come across well at
True,
all.
but like a lot of people have in the
But he's
past.
been in the.
Like
I think Sanders has been in the media long enough to know not to misstep that badly.
yeah, I guess that's a
If
good
he
point.
has it
Like,
in his head, he knows
yeah,
it's not good on Eisen's national show to say, I want him going
yeah.
here. Like
It's
he
been
said,
done before, right?
I
Like the
know,
Mannings did it. Like he's
but
not going there.
it was really tacky. This
Yeah.
I think he knows enough to not do that, regardless
Yeah.
if he has a one that he prefers.
Mm.
I mean, the Raiders would be fun as hell, but the Giants is one of the most historic programs, so whatever.
If he could bring the Giants back to competitive football
so cool.
playoff stuff, like
I think it would be better in New York.
There's no better place to be a star than New York, but other than maybe outside of Los Angeles. But I'd even go New York. If you're a sports star in New York, that's amazing.
Yeah, I would think the spectacle and the New York's a little bit more poised to get there. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Next game, there's just the one on Monday, Iowa, Missouri. Nothing going on. Caleb Johnson's not playing, their star running back, so it's sort of who cares. Sure, there's a bunch of opt-outs here too. So I'm just going to gloss. Do you want to even talk about that one? It's just too bad. It looks like it would have been a good game, but there's just nothing going on here.
No, and there's no, I don't. Those that's pretty much it. The only other thing, like another clear example, is the Louisiana Tech and Army. Louisiana Tech has a bunch of opt-outs already, so Army is a massive favorite in that one.
Yeah,
I think because of the service academy thing, right? Like
Minus
that they're going to.
They've been one of our wagons. I'm for sure going to watch that game.
Yeah, and that's just going to be an Army killing them if I had to pick it. So
yeah, exactly. I'd actually might even take them to cover that number. All right, moving on. So,
last thing about that in the Army game, you're right about taking them to cover too. And because Louisiana Tech, a lot of opt-outs, maybe don't give a crap. And there is nothing worse than trying to attack the triple option when you don't care, because that is relentless. It's just tackle, like
that's
head on tackle all the time. It wears you down in the best of times.
It's the last thing you want to do is deal with a run game like that.
Yeah.
Actually, that's a really good point. Okay, so you've reminded me of a point I wanted to discuss here. When it comes to motivation, I think that might affect defense more than offense, because defense is so much about effort.
Yeah.
Like offense, I'm not saying offensive players do not put effort in, but if you can execute a crisp offensive scheme, there is an effort component, yes, but there is a precision component that's not necessarily linked to a brute force effort. Yeah. Whereas on defense, the pass rush is just brute force. If you're not brute force pass rushing, the offensive line will just stand there waiting for you. They don't need to do anything, at least for run block, for pass blocking. And on run blocking, certain guys obviously need to hit their point. But everyone on the defense, since they don't actually know where the play is going, they all have to be 100 miles an hour. Whereas on the offense, certain people can conserve energy or
Hmm.
If they're a decoy, there's ways for the offensive players to not to conserve energy on certain plays, whereas defense, you have to go 100% all the
Yeah.
time. So to me, the motivation thing this is a theory,
Hmm.
may reveal itself more on defense than on
Gotcha.
offense.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
that's a good stance. It's I'm going to take the other side
Oh, okay. All right.
just because that's what we do. What I will agree with you though is that you're right about the desire, because that is an absolute killer for a defensive lineman. Like if you in your draft projection, if it says sometimes takes a play off,
Oh,
that's a
yeah.
killer,
No, no, no.
right? So you
Well,
can't happen.
either line, but yes,
Yeah,
you can't do
but
that.
you have to have like the high motor all the time. Like that
Yes.
that's a really positive thing. The only other thing I'd push back, you're right about the want to and the tackle and defense and things. The only thing that I think it's the motivation shows itself in a different way on offense, which would be in the preparation. If your motivation is going to
That's
be
a good point.
bad going into the game, and so you're not going to be paying attention to his practice as much and the reps and going the full speed, that's when you start seeing the passes where like the guys ahead of the ball or behind the ball because
Yeah.
the speed wasn't running, or like you're supposed to run a different route when he missed it. Like, so I feel like that happens with the motivation thing for the offense. But
Maybe like a mental
um,
focus almost.
yeah, a little bit, right? Because it'll either affected your preparation or like
Yeah.
your in-game adjustment stuff. So I think it could be just as bad on offense as it is on
Yeah.
defense. But I think I'll agree with you. Like to the casual fan watching it, you'd know immediately if the defense isn't into it, right? Because
Yeah. And it would
so
look
that it's
bad pretty fast.
yes. So
Right. Okay. So then moving on, this one on paper should be a banger. Alabama versus Michigan, but I
right,
think Alabama is going to crush them.
yeah,
It sounds like their actual players are showing up. Even head to head, if both teams show up, I would expect Alabama to kill them.
yeah.
Michigan just
So
has no
just to
offense to speak of.
Sure. Just as an aside, this is more of a production. I mean, you guys are getting behind the window in our thing. Those games are on Tuesday, so I'll be in San Diego by Sunday. So if we
Yes.
want to do more previews, we could do that together when I'm there because
Yeah,
I'll be there.
we'll roll
Okay.
through these, but yeah, if we want, we can knock out another episode here too. But
Okay.
that's the last grouping of games I want to talk about here is just
Okay. On
those
the
few.
Tuesday ones. All right.
Yeah. Well, we've already covered the playoff, the Penn State Boise State. So, I mean, do you have any sense of this game at all? I think Alabama's
Bama,
showing up
Michigan.
for
Is that what
this.
you said?
Yes. You don't know.
No, I don't
No.
know. I don't. I mean, I think both teams, Michigan's had some opt outs. Bama has less, which is a good sign.
Yeah.
But again, this one's more of I'm really worried about Alabama's motivation because they were on the cusp of making the playoffs. So always when you think you're going to make
Yeah.
it and you
Yeah.
don't, that's going to be really bad. Michigan I haven't really enjoyed watching Michigan most of this year. Like the offense has
Mm-mm.
been terrible. The defense has been good. So I assume the defense will be good, but like I just don't know what to expect. And it would be super disappointing to watch it and see a not 100% Bama and this be like a rock fight. And I don't know. So
Can
I don't.
can the argument be made that DeBoer can't afford to have this look bad? Like have a team not show up for him in his
I
first
mean,
year?
he was. What are they? They're like 9-3, and they almost made 9-3 and almost made the playoffs.
But
So
a dud against a national level team,
yeah,
it
I mean, I think
doesn't look. I know that they're bowl games, but I don't know. I don't. You know what? I don't know. The other thing is, so this is a theory
yeah,
that it's DeBoer's first year. It's not going to look good if he drops this game. No matter
no,
what people say, it's just a playoff game. Fan bases and boosters don't think that way.
hmm
Michigan, I would argue Sharon Moore's still competing for. I mean, is he
yep,
sticking around long term or not?
oh yeah,
So DeBoer needs to prove he was the right hire. Sharon Moore needs to prove he's worth keeping.
yep,
So at least the theory is at the coach level, both of these coaches, this matters to them. I don't know. It's
yeah.
just a theory.
Yeah. I mean,
So-
I think bowl games in general, I don't know if there's ever a coach that would go into a bowl game saying this doesn't matter. Like I always think the motivation is never
versus
a problem
coaches
to
that
them.
are already out the door,
Yeah,
right?
sure. I guess
Like
okay.
many of these teams, they don't have their coach anymore.
Yeah,
These two coaches, one of them was just a big time hire to the biggest program, and then the other one's fighting for trying to
Mhm.
be the long-term solution at the most recent national championship program. So
Yeah.
anyways, yeah, I don't know what to make of this game. I hope it's something interesting to watch, but I don't think it will be.
Yeah. And I think that this is one of the ones, again, I would have liked to have bet on it, but I'm not going to because of, I don't know how they're going to feel about it. But it's Alabama by 12 and a half, but the over under is low at 43 and a half.
Very
So it's
low.
always weird when you have like a high line and then a low total.
Yeah, they
Um,
expect Alabama to go 35-3 here or something
right.
like that.
So which I don't think that's going to happen. I don't that's the one thing I don't think is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be 100% Alabama and it just crushes them like that. I think and again, it was if the 1-2 is a little bit down, that means the defense isn't as good. And so I'd lean more toward the over in this one
Oh,
in
interesting.
terms of because I just
Yeah.
don't think Bama's going to have their shutdown defense show up. But
So Dover's leaning over. I'm leaning Bama to cover.
um,
All right, Louisville, Washington should have been an interesting game. I think nothing's going to happen here. I think the spirit is kind of cut out of Washington right now.
all kinds of opt outs for Louisville, only a couple for Washington. So that makes me really worried about the Louisville
Yeah,
desire in this one.
yeah. But we know Belichick's leaving Washington, which is kind of a bummer for the
Yeah.
players there. So again, that could affect their motivation from the sense of a sense of disappointment a bit. I don't know. I get, but it's not the head coach; it's a coordinator. So I don't. Anyways, I hope there's something going on there, but I don't. I'm not going to hold my breath. I'm assuming halfway through the first quarter we'll find out right away what's going on there. Next, South Carolina versus Illinois. South Carolina's been a wagon all year for us. I don't know what to expect out of Illinois. They've shown up pretty strong against some teams, but again, opting out, we don't know exactly who's showing up at this game. South
Not many
Carolina,
Illinois opt outs and a fair
no,
number of South Carolina ones.
and a
So
couple of major defensive players won't be there for South Carolina, and
yeah,
that's the strength of this team.
yeah,
But on that same note, arrows are pointing up for South Carolina. They were a few plays away from being in the playoffs, that's for sure.
yeah.
And Lenore Sellers to me is next year's odds, like the early favorite Heisman player for next year if he continues to improve.
Hmm.
So arrows are pointing up for South Carolina as a program, for Beamer as I think he's going to be he's the coach there. It looks like it's a perfect marriage.
Hmm.
But motivation, even if they're motivated, like you said, they got a lot of players opting out. So they
Hmm.
might not just have the strength they're supposed to have in this game. So that sucks because that should have been a fun game to watch.
Yeah. Same with the next one too. It's
Baylor, LSU.
yeah. Could
Who's
have at
playing in
least
that
been a
game?
good game, but I don't like there's not, yeah.
Man, it's
Just
just
don't know.
yeah.
Yeah.
This whole okay. So then the fact that we have to discuss motivation, opt in and outs, are the coaching staffs there? This can't be sustainable. Something has
No.
to change here.
Yeah, and the first thing that's gonna change is the ratings. The ratings will have to go down,
Yeah.
and then they won't get as much money for the broadcast, and then they're like,
Right.
now we got to do something. So the
Yeah.
only thing that really that's part of the thing that triggered the 12-team playoff is just be getting more eyeballs on games that matter in the playoff thing. Now it was interesting. I think it was released. I think I have this right where the 2 Saturday NFL games still outrated the college football playoff ones, right?
Yes.
So it
Yes.
really
And those
shows
games
you,
were terrible.
and it really shows you what a monster the NFL is, right?
Yeah.
And so even with those games, you would have thought the college one would have at least rated the same or even if better potentially, but but those, like you said, those games weren't good. So
No.
it's
Yeah. I
but
mean,
that's where the change is going to
it's
start.
not reasonable to compare college to the NFL. Not really, because the NFL's that's been buttoned up a lot longer as far as the TV ratings and the
but
product.
they're the one thing that's similar is they're both entertainment products and they're both TV
Yes.
shows essentially, right?
But you're right. You're right. One of them's in
it's all about the
flux.
ratings for
Yes.
both. That's all both leagues care about.
One of them is in major flux, trying to sort itself out while its ratings are going up and up and up. College football ratings, I think it's just the highest they've ever been anyways.
Hmm.
But then the comparison you just said, you see how far away the NFL really is. Like
Yeah.
they can't quite get to that level, even though their college football is the second highest watched thing on all of TV behind the
Mhm.
NFL.
Mhm.
So, God, those NFL games were terrible. The other thing here is, to your point, I guess it does have to hurt at the
Yeah,
ratings and at the
that's where they would
number.
see the difference with when the ratings come in and those bowl games are so bad. And because right now, I'm pretty sure they've just packaged them. Like you have to
Yeah.
pay a massive number for all the bowl games, and but it's
Yeah.
anyway, that's where they'll really see the difference.
So the one thing in favor of the playoffs is this sort of win and move on. There's just an excitement. There's an intensity to that.
Yeah, it was the
That's
only league that didn't have the playoffs.
right.
Right?
Oh,
So
yes.
that's good that it's there.
But my counter argument is pre BCS, before they even did the 1 versus 2.
Yeah.
So going back to what that started in 98, I think.
Yes.
Before that, I kind of enjoyed the idea that the Rose Bowl, the Fiesta Bowl, the Sugar Bowl, the Orange Bowl, and some of the others. I guess the Cotton Bowl was actually a thing, and the Peach Bowl,
Mhm. Yeah,
Citrus.
for
There was
sure.
maybe eight-ish bowl games that housed your top, whatever, 16 teams in the country.
Yep.
And I kind of liked, there was something special, different, unique, obviously unique because it didn't have a playoff, where any one of those games could have been the national championship game, or could have been the game that crowned the national champion, regardless if it's not really 1 versus 2. We've had seasons like that where, well, Auburn went 13-0 and won the Sugar Bowl, but then USC won the Rose Bowl. So which team? I'm probably misquoting the exact seasons, but there was a shared national championship during USC's run with Pete Carroll.
Yeah.
And that was kind of fun to me, that, man, we got stellar games. They all mattered. They all mattered in the national championship story. And it sort of landed the following week, where it was, where did you finally rank at the end of the year? Because that same sort of debate still happening here, like who even belonged in the 12-team playoff in the first place, and
Yeah.
why are we getting Ohio State and Oregon in the second round? Shouldn't that be set up for them to, if possible, meet at the end? So I
Right.
enjoyed that. The other note here, and I'll let you have the floor, is this 12-team playoff guarantees 11 of the 12, what they assume are the 12 best teams, ends the season in a loss. Whereas that old system,
Mm.
6 of the best 12 teams win the final game,
Mm.
which to me was super fun. 6 of the fan bases, just for the pure entertainment sake, the banter sake and the argument sake and all of the stuff that goes with college football that's totally unique to college football. It's kind of fun saying, well, we won the Sugar Bowl. And then, well, yeah, well, we won the Rose Bowls. Well, oh yeah, well, we won the Orange Bowls. Well, who did you play in
Mm.
that? That
Mm.
was all kind of fun. And
Mhm.
now looking back, this argument, nothing has changed. Everyone's arguing now, well, we should have been in, and our strength of schedule is better than theirs, and Indiana's 11-1 is not as good as Alabama's. Not, none of that's changed. So at least, again, now
Mm.
I've just presented the argument for the pre-BCS system, where everyone just went to one bowl game.
Mhm.
That was really fun, and especially more fan bases get to end the year on a win. Whereas
Mhm.
here, you're guaranteeing 11 of them end on a loss.
Mhm.
11 of the top, what we're assuming to be 12. So it
Right.
never again can you have Georgia finishing the season, whatever, 13-0, 12-1, but Ohio State also finishing with that record. And then Texas finishing with that record, and somebody else finishing with that record.
Yeah.
Like, it's that, to me, I enjoyed that, and I see the argument the other way, but now seeing that it really still leaves many, many people unsatisfied, even just with, well, who got in and who didn't get in, who got seeded, who's playing who and what round. And now you're guaranteeing 11 of those teams are going to lose the last game of the season.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I hear you with that stuff. That's a good point about finishing with a loss, like especially for teams that had a good season, right? That's
Sure.
the only thing I'll say is that's what happens in every other sport.
But
right?
that's why I thought
sport,
college was so much more fun at the end, because you can finish with a win.
Fair enough, but it's the part that was when you talk about like who should be in, who should be in and not, or where should people be ranked, and the frustration with that. The big difference is there's a difference between having that argument prior to the playoffs and having it after. Having it after was ridiculous when you had like Georgia, Texas, all 13-1 or something, and then some committee votes on who officially finishes first. Like that was ridiculous. It's way better, in my opinion, to have the argument about the ranking first, and then they go in the play, and at least they settle it on the field. So
Yep.
Yes, we're
Yep.
still having the argument, but like it doesn't. It's in a way better place now because it's doing it at the end seemed ridiculous. So
And I maintain all of those fan bases are going to keep arguing at the end, anyways. Like
yeah,
afterwards,
probably.
they're
I
going to
mean,
be like, well, Alabama fans are going to be like, well, we should have been there. So that
right,
argument's just going to be there.
but there was to not make it to the top 12 is one thing versus like the before when it's like you could have been fifth, but there's really less of a difference between fifth and one compared to
I
now.
agree.
But yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the
I
no,
get all I'm
they'll
doing is
still
the playoff system's obvious. It's obvious that now how many more do you need in to prove okay, you're in. Even if we go to
yeah.
16-32, you're in. You have to earn your way to the end. The idea is you earn your way to the end with the playoffs, right?
The thing you said about the argument, it's like, people at the end, Bama are going to say they've sort of been in it. They'll still, those fan bases will still make the argument. That is one of the best things about college football is that fan bases are going to make ridiculous arguments no matter what. Like we can
for the
have
rest of the year.
We can have 100-person playoff tournament that it's
every
people would
South
still
Carolina
argue
fan
stuff with
Every South Carolina fan has a legitimate argument as to why they should have been in. Same with every Alabama fan.
I played golf yesterday with a former football player from ASU, and I was like, "What do you think about that game's coming up?" And he's like, "Well, I took ASU plus the points. Like it's obvious,
of course
like
he
this,
did.
right? Like, and it's the and I'm like, absolutely, and I didn't know what to say because I'm like, Texas is a better roster, and I just they're
you can't say that to a former ASU player.
It was going through my mind. I didn't say it out loud. I was like, I got better players. There's that a better record. It's tougher teams, and I'm like, Arizona's had more rest than Texas. That's what I said because they had the bye week. I'm like, I said that week of rest I think could be big.
Was he on board?
He was totally on board.
Yeah, that's great. That's great.
So that was.
So if you haven't watched our previous episode, Dover's traveling right now. He's in Arizona on a semi-Christmas golf trip on his way to come visit me here in California.
Solely to come visit you.
Right. And then we're going to do some shows here in the podcast together. It's going to be fun.
That's right.
All right. Well, I mean, this debate can go on forever, but I think that's why college football is super fun because the debate's going to go on. And either system was going to leave somebody unhappy. So this is what we got now. So we'll see we'll see how it ends.
But really looking forward to those playoff games. I can't wait to watch them with you. We haven't watched the game together in some time.
Yep.
And we'll be able to record in person. So that's going to be good.
Yeah, it's going to be fun. All right, guys. Well, that's what we got for all of these other, I don't know what you call them, just the random bowl games. Yeah, I know, right?
The others. Yeah.
The others. We'll call them the others.
Yeah.
Let us know what you think in the comments. If you went to some of these schools, I know we've got some Boise State alum on the channel that have been watching, some Arizona State people. So it's fun when you guys have some intel that we don't know about. So jump in the comments if you can. Let us know what you think of how your team's going to do in any of these games. All right, we'll catch you later.